You know, after more than 30 years working in medicine, especially with people over 50, there's one moment I will never forget. It was a quiet Tuesday morning. A patient of mine, a man who had just retired, planning to spend the afternoon fishing, suddenly couldn't lift his right arm. His words became tangled, like his mouth refused to obey him. His wife told me, "David, he was just making coffee." And then, everything changed, my friend. That's how stroke often arrives. Not with a warning, not with a gentle tap on the shoulder, but like a storm ripping through a calm sky. I want you to imagine this. Inside your brain, the very thing that holds your memories, your stories, your laughter when a stroke hits. 1.9 million brain cells die every single minute. Every minute. By the time an hour passes, a lifetime of abilities can disappear. Your voice, your movement, your independence. Have you ever thought about that? How something so small, so silent, can change everything. Stroke is the second leading cause of death in the world, and the number one cause of disability. I see the aftermath all the time. People who used to walk miles every morning now struggle to button a shirt. Strong, confident grandparents suddenly needing help just to lift a spoon. And it breaks my heart not because they didn't try, but because the warning signs were so easy to ignore. A patient once told me, "Doc, I didn't want to believe anything was wrong. I thought it would go away." But stroke doesn't go away. It steals time, and time is the one thing we can't buy back. So, let me ask you, have you ever felt numbness in your face for a moment and brushed it off, or had your speech slur for a few seconds and blamed it on being tired? My friend, these moments matter. Today, I want us to walk together gently, honestly through the truth about stroke. Not to scare you, but to empower you, because knowledge is not just power, it's protection. And if you're over 50, you deserve every ounce of protection we can give. Let's begin. Now that we've opened this conversation about stroke, I want to take you a little deeper gently. Clearly, because understanding what actually happens inside the brain can make all the difference in the world. You see, after decades of caring for older adults, I've noticed something. Most people know the word stroke, but very few truly understand the two forms it can take. And when something is misunderstood, it's easy to underestimate it or ignore the subtle signs that one day could save your life. Let me share this with you as if we're sitting together in my office. Just two human beings trying to preserve the life we've worked so hard to build. There are two main types of stroke. They're very different, yet the urgency is exactly the same. The first, and the most common, is called ischemic stroke. About 85% of strokes fall into this group. Imagine a blood vessel in the brain, a tiny, delicate tunnel suddenly being blocked by a blood clot. That clot may have formed right there, or it may have traveled from somewhere else in the body, like the heart or neck, and lodged itself in a place it absolutely does not belong. A patient of mine once described it beautifully without realizing how accurate he was. He said, "Doc, it felt like my brain hit a traffic jam, but there was no detour." And he was right. When the brain loses blood flow, there is no backup road, no alternate route. What stops, stops entirely. Then there's the second type, less common, but often more devastating. Hemorrhagic stroke, responsible for about 15% of cases. This one happens when a blood vessel in the brain bursts, instead of a blockage. You have bleeding flooding into areas that were never meant to hold blood. The pressure rises. The brain becomes irritated, compressed, and injured all at once. I remember a woman in her 70s, sharp-minded and strong-willed. She told me she'd had a terrible headache the night before, but refused to go to the hospital because she didn't want to be a bother. By the time she arrived in the ER, a fragile vessel deep in her brain had already ruptured. Her story still weighs on me. She could have survived with far fewer complications if she had come earlier. And here's the thing, my friend, even though the causes differ, clot versus bleed, the rule is always the same. Time equals brain. Every minute that passes, more brain cells die, more memories fade, more abilities slip away. The window for treatment is small, painfully small. I want you to imagine this, really picture it. You're sitting at the kitchen table, reading the morning news, when suddenly your hand goes weak or your words come out uneven. It might last more than a minute or maybe only a few seconds. Many people shrug it off. They tell themselves, "I'm just tired," or "Maybe I stood up too fast." But those tiny moments, they're not random. They're not harmless. They're the brain whispering. Something is wrong. Please act now. I've seen lives saved because someone recognized the signs and called 911 immediately. And I've seen lives forever changed because someone waited 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour hoping it would just pass. Let me ask you from one human to another. If you felt weakness in your arm right now, would you hesitate if your word suddenly tangled? Would you downplay it? I hope. After hearing this, your answer becomes no. Stroke may be powerful, but knowledge and quick action is even more powerful. Remember the truth that guides every stroke specialist, every emergency doctor, every neurologist I know. Time is brain. Every second counts, and your life is worth that urgency. If you've been with me in this conversation so far, you already understand how quickly a stroke can steal what matters most. But now I want to give you something even more personal, something practical, something that could save your life or the life of someone you love. It's a simple test. 6 letters, BEFAST. Maybe you've heard it before, maybe you haven't, but today, I want you to feel it, to understand it the way a doctor sees it in the emergency room, and the way families experience it when every second feels like a lifetime. Let me tell you a story. Years ago, a woman named Martha came into my clinic with her daughter. She was in her early 60s, bright smile, that kind of gentle energy you instantly trust. One morning, as she got out of bed, she stumbled. The whole world tilted. Just for a moment, she brushed it off, blamed it on standing up too quickly. Later that afternoon, her vision blurred on one side. Again, she told herself, maybe I need new glasses. That night, her face drooped ever so slightly, like one side was tired, but she could still talk, she could still walk. So, she waited. By the next morning, she couldn't move her right arm. Her daughter found her on the floor, frightened, confused, trying desperately to speak but unable to form words. They called 911, but precious hours had already slipped away. I still think about Martha. Because she is the reason I repeat "be fast" every chance I get, her daughter once told me. If we had known those 6 letters, everything would have been different. So today, I want to pass those 6 letters to you, not as a lesson, but as a lifeline. Let's take them one by one slowly, gently, like an older doctor sitting with you at a kitchen table, sharing something deeply important. Balance. Have you ever stood up and suddenly felt like the world tilted sideways? A sudden loss of balance is often the very first whisper of trouble. Not the kind that comes from arthritis or a stiff back. I'm talking about a sudden, unexplained wobble, like your feet forgot how to listen to the floor. I remember a man who told me, "Doc, it felt like my body wasn't mine for 3 seconds. That's it, 3 seconds. But that was enough to tell us his brain wasn't getting the blood it needed. If something like that ever happens to you, even briefly, I want you to pay attention. Your body is wise. It always speaks. The question is, do we listen? Eyes. Stroke has a way of stealing vision before it steals anything else. Sometimes it happens as blurred vision, sometimes double vision, sometimes half your visual field just disappears. One of my patients once described it as someone pulling a curtain across the world. Not painful, not dramatic, just a slow fade, like a dimmer switch being turned down inside the brain. If your vision suddenly changes, even for a moment, please don't chalk it up to old age. At our age, we tend to blame everything on getting older. But the truth is, sudden changes should never be ignored. Your eyes are windows to the brain when they misbehave. It's often because the brain is crying for help. Face. This is one of the easiest signs to spot, yet one of the most ignored. A slight droop on one side of the face, a crooked smile, a twitch that doesn't go away. I sometimes ask patients, "Can you smile for me?" And in that moment, the whole story unfolds. One side lifts, the other side doesn't. A stroke doesn't always take away speech or movement right away. Sometimes it starts with the gentlest change in the face, like a painting smudged just slightly on the canvas. But even that tiny smudge means a part of the brain isn't receiving blood. If you ever see someone's face drift or sag, even for a moment, don't wait. Don't ask them to lie down. Don't give them water. Call for help immediately. Arm. This is the sign families often recall afterward. He said his arm felt heavy. She said her hand was tingling. One side just wouldn't listen. I once watched a man try to raise both arms in the ER. The left one rose easily. The right one trembled, hovered halfway, and sank like a leaf falling in slow motion. That small weakness, that subtle difference, is the brain begging for blood. And it's something anyone can test. Ask someone to raise both arms. If one drifts down, or feels numb, or won't move at all, it's a stroke until proven otherwise. ESCO. Speech. This one is heartbreaking. Speech doesn't always vanish. Sometimes it becomes soft, or tangled, or slow. Sometimes the person knows exactly what they want to say, but the words get trapped on the way out. A woman once grabbed my hand in the emergency room. Her eyes were terrified, her mouth frozen in the middle of a word. You could see the thought in her eyes. Clear as day, I'm still here. Why can't I speak? That moment stays with me. Stroke doesn't just attack the body, it attacks identity, the voice, the language, the ability to say I love you. If your speech suddenly changes, or if you hear someone slurring, mumbling, or struggling to find simple words, don't guess. Don't wait. Don't see if it gets better. Time. And now we come to the most important letter of all. Time. Because stroke is a thief, but a predictable one. It steals in minutes. Every minute without treatment kills nearly 2 million brain cells. Every minute lost is memory lost, strength lost, independence lost. Time is not a suggestion. It's the only real weapon we have. If you see any one of these signs, just one, don't hesitate. Don't second guess. Don't call a family member to ask what to do. Don't wait for the symptoms to settle down. Just call 911. Let me say that again, not as a doctor, but as someone who has sat beside far too many hospital beds. If you ever see one sign, even one, call 911 immediately. Because the worst thing that can happen if you're wrong is embarrassment. But the worst thing that can happen if you're right and you wait is a life forever changed. My friend, you deserve the chance to protect your future, your voice, your memories, your ability to hug the people you love. So do me a favor, remember these 6 letters, and promise yourself that if they ever appear, even for a few seconds, you'll act without hesitation. Because Be Fast isn't just a test, it's your lifeline, and it could be the reason you or someone you love survives. You know, after all these years working with stroke patients, one thing still amazes me, the incredible power of modern medicine. For most of my career, stroke felt like a force we couldn't stop, something that arrived suddenly, stole precious abilities, and left us feeling helpless. But today, we have 2 remarkable, life-saving treatments that can literally pull someone back from the edge, if we act in time. And I want to talk with you about them the same way I would with a patient sitting across from me, gently, clearly, with the honesty you deserve. Let's start with something quite miraculous, something many people still don't know about. There's a procedure called mechanical thrombectomy. To me, it feels almost like science fiction brought into real life. A patient comes in with a large clot blocking one of the major arteries in the brain, the kind of stroke that used to mean instant disability. But now, a trained specialist threads a tiny catheter up through a blood vessel, usually from the leg, all the way into the brain. They find the clot and physically pull it out. Imagine that for a moment, a clot that's choking off an entire region of the brain, suddenly removed like a cork from a bottle. Blood flow rushes back in, cells breathe again, function begins to return. I've watched patients go from near paralysis to speaking within hours, not because of luck, not because of chance, but because this one procedure opened the door for the brain to heal. But my friend, this miracle has a clock on it. Thrombectomy works best within the first 6 to 24 hours depending on imaging, and every minute that ticks away lowers the chance of recovery. I've seen families hesitate. Maybe he's just tired. Maybe it will pass. Let's wait a few minutes. And with each minute lost, brain cells die. One of my patients, a retired firefighter named Bill, came in unable to speak and barely able to move his right side. His wife recognized the symptoms. Thank God she remembered Be Fast. She called 911 immediately. Within 2 hours, the specialists had removed a clot the size of a pea from his brain. 2 days later, he was sitting upright, telling jokes to the nurses. "Doc," he said, "I feel like someone turned the lights back on." That's what thrombectomy can do. But it's not the only breakthrough we have. There's another treatment one you may have heard whispered about, a medication called Alteplase, sometimes called RTPA. I like to think of it as a clot-dissolving medicine, but in reality, It's far more elegant than that. When someone has an ischemic stroke, a clot-blocking blood flow, RTPA, goes into the bloodstream and works like a cleanup crew. It breaks down the clot from the inside, dissolving the obstruction and letting blood flow return to the injured part of the brain. But here's the challenge. This medication only works in a very narrow window. The ideal time is within the first 4.5 hours after symptoms begin. And let me tell you, 5 hours sounds like a lot, until you realize how much time people lose by waiting. A man once told me after his stroke, "Doc, I thought I should lie down first and see if it passed." He waited 2 hours. Then his wife tried to convince him to go to the hospital. That took another 30 minutes. Finally, they decided to drive themselves instead of calling 911. By the time he arrived, his window for RTPA was gone. He made some recovery, but he never fully regained the strength in his hand. And he told me, months later, "I wish I had known about the time limit. That's why I'm sharing this with you today, because you deserve to know what's possible." Both treatments, thrombectomy and clot-dissolving medication, are nothing short of medical breakthroughs. I've seen them give people back their speech, their independence, their ability to hold their grandchildren. I've watched families cry tears of relief when a loved one begins to move a hand again, or forms a word they feared would never return. But the truth that ties all of this together is simple. It's the same truth I've repeated for decades. Time is everything. You can have the best doctors in the world, the most advanced tools, the newest technology, but none of it matters if we don't act quickly. So let me say this with all the sincerity in my heart. If you ever experience sudden weakness, numbness, face drooping, vision changes, trouble speaking, or sudden loss of balance, even if it lasts only seconds, get help. Don't wait. Don't talk yourself out of it. Don't hope it goes away. Call 911. Because every minute you save is a piece of yourself you protect. And you, my friend, are worth protecting. You know, every time I talk about mechanical thrombectomy, I still feel a sense of awe, even after all these years in medicine. There's something almost poetic about it, the idea that a doctor can travel through the hidden highways of your body, from the vessels in your groin all the way to the delicate branches inside your brain, to rescue you from a stroke. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you're lying on a hospital table. You're scared, confused, maybe unable to speak or move one side of your body. A specialist, someone who's trained for years just for this moment, gently threads a catheter through a small incision near your groin. That catheter travels upward, through arteries you can't feel, navigating toward a clot that has blocked the blood supply to a part of your brain. And then comes the moment of truth. Using a tiny device called a stent retriever, they capture the clot almost like casting a fishing line and hooking something that shouldn't be there and pull it out. When that clot is removed, blood rushes back into the part of the brain that was starving, gasping, dying. I've seen it dozens of times, and I'll tell you, it never gets any less miraculous. One of my patients, a man named Robert, had what we call a massive stroke, the kind that, years ago, would have left him severely disabled. His wife recognized the signs immediately: the slurred speech, the arm that dropped, the sudden confusion in his eyes. She didn't hesitate. She called 911. Within 2 hours, Robert was on the table. They threaded the catheter. They found the clot. They pulled it out. 2 days later, he was walking around the hallway, telling me, "Doc, I feel like I got my life back," and in many ways, he did. But I need to be honest with you. Thrombectomy isn't magic, it's timing. The sooner the clot is removed, the more brain tissue survives. In some cases, with special imaging, doctors can perform the procedure up to 24 hours after symptoms begin. But that doesn't mean you have 24 hours to wait, not even close. The earlier someone gets to the hospital, the higher the chance this treatment will work, and the higher the chance you'll walk out with your life intact. I've also seen the other side: patients who waited, patients who weren't sure, patients who said, "Let me rest for a bit," or "Maybe it's just my blood pressure," or "I don't want to make a fuss." By the time they reached the ER, the window had closed. And the hardest part for me as a doctor, as a human being, is knowing that their story could have ended differently. So here's what I want you to hold on to. If you ever see the signs: the face drooping, the arm weakness, the sudden trouble speaking, or even that strange moment of imbalance, don't try to talk yourself out of it. Don't wait. Don't hope it passes. Don't lie down to rest. Just call 911. Because this treatment, this incredible procedure that can literally pull a clot from your brain, only works if we beat the clock, and you deserve the chance to beat it. You know, after decades working with patients over 50, there's one thing that still breaks my heart every time. Most people don't lose their golden window because the treatment wasn't available. They lose it because of simple mistakes made in the first few minutes. And I want to talk to you about those mistakes gently, not to blame anyone, but to protect you. The first one is hesitation. So many people feel a sudden numbness or slurred speech and think, maybe I just need to sit down for a minute. They wait. They hope it passes. They convince themselves it's nothing. But stroke doesn't wait. It doesn't negotiate. And those first minutes are everything. Another mistake, calling a family member instead of 911. I've watched people lose an hour because they phoned their daughter, then their neighbor, then someone else to get an opinion. My friend, stroke is not a group decision. If something feels wrong, act first. Ask questions later. Driving yourself to the hospital is another one. I know you might feel embarrassed calling an ambulance, but ambulances alert the hospital before you arrive. That saves precious minutes, sometimes enough to qualify for treatments you'd miss otherwise. And then there's denial, the quiet, dangerous voice in the back of the mind saying, I don't want to bother anyone, or I'm sure it'll go away, a woman once told me, through tears. Doc, I didn't want to make a scene, but by the time she arrived, her treatment window had closed. So let me tell you something as clearly and lovingly as I can. You are not a burden. Your life is worth the call. And if something feels off, even for seconds, don't hesitate. Because the only real tragedy is waiting. As we come to the end of this conversation, I want to leave you with something deeper than facts, something I hope will stay with you long after this video ends. Life, especially after 50, has a way of reminding us just how fragile and precious our moments are. The laughter of a grandchild, the warmth of a morning sun, the quiet peace of sitting at the kitchen table with someone you love. These aren't small things. These are the moments we fight for, the moments we protect. Stroke tries to take those moments away. But knowledge, awareness, quick action, these give them back. If this video helped you, even a little, I want you to imagine how many others out there need to hear it too. Someone your age, someone older, someone living alone who doesn't know the signs, someone who might one day remember a single sentence from this video and save a life because of it, maybe even their own. So, my friend, if this message touched you, if it opened your eyes, or if you simply believe that protecting life is worth sharing, then I gently ask you, click like, share this video with someone you care about. And if you'd like more conversations like this, honest, simple, human conversations about health, aging, and staying strong, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. Not for numbers, not for popularity, but because every time you engage, this message reaches one more person who might need it. We're building a community here, one where wisdom is shared, where fear is replaced with understanding, and where no one has to age alone or uninformed. Thank you for spending this time with me. Take care of yourself. Stay aware, stay hopeful, and remember, your life is worth protecting. I'll see you in the next video.